Are you struggling to learn vibrato on the violin? Then you are probably making one of these 7 mistakes. After studying the methods of the best violinists worldwide and teaching them to hundreds of students, I have found the most common vibrato mistakes. And today I will show you every one of them and what you should do instead to have a vibrato like a pro. And the first mistake is trying to improve a fake vibrato. The problem here is that most people are doing a vibrato that is not a vibrato. Let me show you how it looks like. If your vibrato looks a little bit like that, so what I mean is that it's like very fast, but you can't control the speed. It's very small too, but very fast. And at the same time you are really tense. That's not a vibrato, okay? That's like a trembling movement, okay? Like when you are stressed, that's more something like that. The main problem with that is that it can't be controlled. That means you can't make it slower, you can't make it wider. And because of that, you can't use it to make a piece sound beautifully. And no matter how many times you repeat that, it will not improve. At the end of this video, we'll see how you can learn a real vibrato step by step using the Vibrato Mastery Framework. But for now, let's go to mistake 2, holding the violin with 2 contact points. Something very important to make the vibrato work is to have the right posture here. The problem is that if you are holding the violin strongly from both sides during vibrato, you will not be able to develop a wide vibrato. It will always stay very small and very tense. So basically here, the first thing you need to understand is that when we normally play in first position till 4th position, we have always 2 contact points plus the contact point of the finger. So that means I have always a contact point between the neck of the violin and my thumb and my index finger, like that. And then I have on top of that a 3rd contact point with the finger on the string. And that makes that the hand is very stable. But for the vibrato, we need to do something else. Basically, instead of having 2 plus 1 contact point, we'll have only 1 contact point, only the thumb. You'll have no contact here with the index, and of course the point of the finger that will touch the string for the vibrato. That means when I do vibrato, instead of staying like that, I will let a little bit of space here between my index finger and the neck of the violin, so that I can really vibrate freely. Okay, so let me show you the difference. First by holding the violin between index and thumb, and then by letting it free. Okay, I can do a movement much wider and freer. But for that to work, you need really to feel that the violin is resting on the thumb. That means you can really support it from under the violin. You can see that here, my thumb comes under the violin, here, and it holds the violin. And then the only contact point I have is my finger on the string, like that. Then the third mistake is trying to vibrate like a pro as a beginner. So what I mean with that is that most people will start vibrating way too fast too early. That means that it makes only 1 week or a few months they are training vibrato, and very often not so very systematically, but then they will try to vibrate very fast. The problem is that they didn't learn the right movement. And when they try to vibrate very fast the whole time, what they end up doing very often is the fake vibrato we saw in the first mistake. Or they are doing just the wrong movement. And the longer they do that, the more difficult it becomes to correct that later. If you want to be able to have a very fast and beautiful vibrato, you need to start very slow first and increase the speed very, very gradually and carefully, okay? It could really take months to increase just a little bit the speed. Basically, you need to see the speed of the vibrato like the speed of playing different notes with the left hand. When I play with the left hand, when you are a beginner, you don't start doing Shradieck tempo 160 in 16th note. Okay, it's not how you start. You start tempo 45 maximal in 8th note. Okay, and then after a few months, maybe you move to tempo 60. Okay, it's just 30% faster. And then after 1 year, maybe you will start playing in 16th note, and then it's very slow to increase the tempo even more and even more. Yeah, it's the same with the vibrato. It takes time to increase the speed, but if you start too soon making it quick, then it's go wrong. By the way, we just published a free violin masterclass. To register, just click the link below this video. Now let's speak about mistake 4, implementing vibrato with the wrong timing. Here, what I see a lot is that student will start learning the vibrato, and then a few weeks later, he will directly try to apply vibrato to everything he's playing, to every piece. And the problem here is that there is a big difference and a big technical gap between being able to play the vibrato on one note as an exercise and implementing it in one piece. And basically, yeah, if you just look at the main differences, one of them, for example, is just that when you are just practicing, very often you will just play one note for 5-10 seconds at a time. In opposite, when you have a piece, very often you have only like one note per second. That's way faster. And then you are changing the finger, maybe changing the position too. And the problem is that it makes the vibrato way more difficult. It's not only that it doesn't sound very well in the piece, it's that they are learning it the wrong way, because they are then doing just anything they can to make the vibrato work in their piece, but that's not the right thing. And because of that, they are just taking wrong habits. And here, the solution is to use something I call the rule of progressive implementation. That's part of the Violin Pyramid Method. So you can see it here, and what it says is that to create a new habit and to master it, you need to not only learn the right techniques, and you need to implement it very step by step from the technical exercises till the piece. For example, a very simple process you could use to implement the vibrato after you master the vibrato for each single finger would be to go to 2-note exercises on one string. It could be, for example, B to D. Here, what you're practicing is a transition from the B to the D, or first finger to third finger in first position on the A string. Then we'll repeat that with the different possible variation on each string and with each fingers. And then the next step, that could be to implement that with bigger exercises like 1-octave exercises, with string changes especially. At the same time, when we start, it could be only in whole note, very slow. And later on in half note, and later on in quarter note. And way later in eighth note. The next point, that will be to implement it in one etude. Okay, like the etude from Wolford, for example, or Kaiser etude, very good both for beginners. Then we have a mix of technical difficulties and at the same time some melodies like in a song. And then the last thing, of course, would be to implement it in your piece. But here's the same, you will not do it at once, you will need to do it step by step. One of the best way of doing that is that instead of playing the song like you should want to play it at the end, for example, first, I will play each note evenly in half note. The next thing here is that first I should really define which rhythm I will vibrate. Because at the beginning it could be very difficult to vibrate fast rhythm like 8th note or 16th note, yeah? Because of that, I could say first I will vibrate only every half note and let the other notes without vibrato. Then mistake 5 is thinking vibrato will fix everything else. So first, something very important is that you need to start the vibrato at the right time. For example, in the Violinacademy, we are teaching the vibrato to our students only starting at level 8, like you can see here. And what I say a lot is that most people that start vibrato are actually not ready to learn vibrato because they don't have the right basics. At the same time, people start vibrato thinking it will fix like everything else, basically. They think that when they play, if it doesn't sound like they would like, it's because they have no vibrato. And it's quite always not the case. What vibrato do very often is just to hide anything else, but it doesn't improve the rest. So basically, what we really advise our students, it's when you play something to play it first without vibrato. Because when you start playing with vibrato, it makes it very challenging to air the intonation and to improve it. It doesn't mean that the person listening to you will not hear that your intonation is bad, but it will make it difficult to improve it. At the same time, you will start focusing really on the vibrato to make the piece sound better, but actually the phrasing should come from the bow. If I come back to my example, I'm not playing, but I'm phrasing with the bow. And you see that even without vibrato, that sounds really good. And then the vibrato is just the last thing I put on top of it, and I sync it basically with my bow to make it sound even better. But it's the last step. Then mistake 6 is keeping fingers like a wood stick. So very often one of the reasons the vibrato is not working is because the finger is way too tense. And because of that, no vibrato comes. Something very important with the vibrato is to let the finger stay very flexible and open and close like that. So like you can see here, my finger at the end is like that and at the beginning is like that. So I go from wrong to straight. And doing that, every articulation stays completely free and flexible. If instead you block the finger, you can't do vibrato. Okay, so what you need first to train is this, to have the finger completely relaxed and free. A good exercise for that is just holding your finger with your right hand and then moving the whole left arm like you were doing some vibrato and feeling that your fingers stay flexible. And now let's go to the last mistakes. Not using the vibrato mastery framework. Just kidding, but basically the biggest problem is that most people learning the vibrato don't have any kind of plan. And if you don't have a plan, it will be extremely difficult. So let me show you all the steps. So this is the vibrato mastery framework that we teach in the Violinacademy. That's part of the Violin Pyramid Method. And like you can see, the first step is to have the right left hand posture for vibrato. Okay, that's what we saw today, just using your V, putting it under the violin, and having only 2 contact points. Then the next step is that you need to have the right relaxation and finger pressure. That means that everything needs to be flexible. Okay, but here one big mistake I see is that people will move like that instead of like that. Okay, and here the reason is actually that will be the next step is you need to choose one vibrato. Basically we have 2 very standard vibrato. The first is the arm vibrato when you move the whole arm like that, and the second one is the hand or wrist vibrato when you move only the hand from the wrist. The problem is that many people just don't really know which one they are learning or try to learn both at the same time, and what they are ending is that they move both the arm and the wrist, doing something like that. And because of that, it's not working. So you really need to understand, you could do that, moving only the arm and letting your wrist really straight, or you could do a wrist vibrato like that, by moving only the hand from the wrist but without moving that. But you can't combine both. Then the next point is understanding vibrato, exactly how it works, what produces vibrato. So here, very quickly, basically what produces vibrato is that your finger will rotate slowly on the string. So let's look at my finger. This is this rotation from the finger, the end of the finger to be exact, that produces the vibrato, because at the beginning my note is higher, and then it becomes lower as my finger flattens on the string. And as it comes back, it goes again higher. Then next point is that you need to start with some preliminary exercises to find the right posture and the right movement. So there is different exercises you could do. One, for example, to train the arm vibrato, is just to put the finger on the string, but don't press the string, okay? Just touch it very superficially with the finger, and then you will move the hand like that. So basically, like if you were doing a change of position, a shift, the same thing, but very slowly, okay? And basically that's the same as vibrato. The only difference later is that you will let the finger on the string. It will not move. And when you move your arm, then the finger will become flat and then again round. There are other preliminary exercises, but let's go to the next step. That will be the step-by-step vibrato exercises. That's very important. And here, what you need to do is really to start with a very, very slow movement that you can really control completely. That means starting with only half a movement per second, then increasing the speed very gradually so that it's never uncontrolled. So here, for example, the exercises we give our students at the Violinacademy. And like you can see, we start with only half movement per second. Then on the second one, we move to a variation of it that's a little bit quicker. But it's still generally the same speed. And then first we move to doing a complete movement per second. And then we do 1.5 per second. Then we do 2 complete movements per second. And then faster and faster. But as a beginner, I would really advise to do maximum in tempo 60, 2 complete movements per second. At the fastest, okay? And start very slowly like I showed. And then increase to 3 movements per second only after a few months, and then to 4 only after a few more months, so very gradually. So that in the end, it will look like that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay, and then just fast. Okay, basically the fastest vibrato at around like 14 movements per second. Then, after you can have a good vibrato at 2 movements per second, you could start with the rule of progressive implementation that we saw today, implementing in exercises, etudes, and pieces. And then there is a very important rule, the width and speed rule. It's that if you want your vibrato to sound really like a professional, to sound really beautifully, you need to adjust his width. The width that's this. This would be very wide or very tight. And then how fast it is, slow or fast. And basically the width and the speed need to go together so that it sounds well. And here important to understand is that it's always change. When I play a piece, it's not always the same vibrato, it's not. It's change. I could start slowly, then getting faster. And basically I will always match what the bow do. And the last step, unlimited vibrato, it's basically that when you do a vibrato so that it sounds well, you really need to have a vibrato that's uninterrupted. The common mistake with most people when they play vibrato is that it sounds like that. They play, they stop the vibrato, they play the next note, they start the vibrato, they stop the vibrato, they play the next note, and so on. You want, in opposite, to have the vibrato never stop, okay? I go from note to note, and it just continue moving. It doesn't matter which finger I'm playing, which position I am, it should never stop, okay? And here you will see all the vibrato exercises with me. Thanks you.